everyone, I'm Kathryn Blanche, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different from what I normally do. Usually I'm talking about my books or reviewing books, but today I'm going to actually be talking about the process of writing books. So I hope everybody is doing well. We are all still stuck inside, trying to keep our social distance with COVID-19. It's a really frustrating time for a lot of people. It's a really scary time for a lot of people. And so a lot of people are starting to turn towards ways to distract themselves, be it watching movies, reading books, or working on their writing projects. And a lot of people have been asking me for advice on getting through their manuscript, because that first draft of the manuscript can sometimes be really intimidating, especially if this is your first book that you've been working on. So I've decided today that I want to talk to you a little bit about some of my tips and my tricks to getting through the first draft of your manuscript. So I've got kind of 4 main ideas that we're going to be working with today, and all of this is to really just kind of to encourage you to help yourself and to help this creative process occur naturally to you and at your pace. Because everybody's different, and what helps one person doesn't necessarily help another. So these are just ideas to try to help you find what works best for you. So the first idea is to be humble. There's so many people that sort of take this approach that the first draft of your manuscript has got to be perfect. And that's really not the case. In fact, it's going to be completely imperfect. And that's what's wonderful about it. The first draft, you're setting the framework for the story that's to come. And so you really want to set realistic expectations for yourself with this draft, especially if this is your first time writing a manuscript for a book or for a screenplay or whatever project you're currently working on. Probably the hardest thing is to accept that it's not going to be perfect, because if you're a perfectionist like me, you're going to be sitting there thinking about every little detail. And then you start to second guess yourself. Oh no, is that scene that I wrote, 3 chapters back, adequate? Maybe I should go back and change this. Maybe I should go fix that other thing. But if you keep going back and you keep changing constantly during this first draft, you're going to get stuck working on those scenes and reworking those scenes. So the way that I like to approach it is you just want to get through that first draft. Don't worry about editing. No, it's not going to be perfect. What you can do instead is leave notes for yourself. You can use the track changes feature on different word processing platforms that allows you to drop notes in. Or you could just put them in parentheses or highlight the notes or something to make them stand out a little bit for you. But the idea is not to make a perfect first draft, it's to get everything ready for what's to come later. In the later drafts, you're going to be adding more information about places, you're going to be understanding your characters more. It's a process. This is just a first step in that process. So enjoy just laying the framework for your project. And sort of why I'm referring to this as being humble is that you have to be okay with admitting that what you're writing is not perfect, and that's totally okay. That's 100% acceptable. Remember, it's just your first draft. Next, I want to talk about being understanding and understanding what your pace is as a writer. So some writers like me who have more time to dedicate, who are used to writing for longer stretches of time, we might be writing 3,000 to 5,000 words a day. But I certainly didn't start off writing like that. I definitely, I would write maybe a couple paragraphs a week. Even if your goal for the day is just writing a sentence or writing a paragraph, that's totally fine. That's great because you're still making progress. And that's the really important thing, is to keep pushing forward with this goal that you have. And why I say to be understanding of that is because if you are putting too much pressure on yourself to write a certain amount a day, that can actually be harmful to the creative process. And you start becoming fixated on these writing goals. And sometimes that really inhibits your ability to create. And so for me, rather than setting word count goals, I usually try to make a goal of writing 2 to 3 scenes a day. And I usually like to make that my writing goal because it's a more creative goal than setting a number for myself. And you may not reach your goal that you set for the day. Maybe you wanted to write a certain number of paragraphs, but you only made half of that. it's still progress. And you should never be hard on yourself for not getting through that point, because maybe what you were writing was more difficult than what you're used to writing. For example, if I'm writing a romance scene, I know it's going to take me a whole lot longer than if I'm writing an action sequence. So I try to be more understanding of myself on those days, knowing that I'm not going to reach my usual writing goal, just because it's going to take me longer to process through that scene. And again, this is all about a long-term goal, not about short-term goals for the day. Something else that you may want to ask yourself and to truly understand is if you really want to be working on that particular project right now. If this project's not speaking to you, and especially if you've been working on this project for a really long time, then it might be a good time to take a break and work on something else for a while. It's totally fine to take the project and say, you know what, I'm going to put that on a shelf. You're going to be what you are for a while. I'm going to work on something else, and then I'm going to come back to it later. My third point is to be organized, and this kind of has two areas, both with your schedule and with your writing. So if you're home with your families and you have dinner that you're going to be cooking, you have laundry to do, you have work from your day job that you're maybe doing remotely, there's a lot of things that are already on your plate. So to ensure that you're going to have a dedicated period of time, it's good to actually schedule that in just as you would work time. Something that I find can be really helpful with this is if you have a little planner that you can use. I love having these sort of weekly planners where I can schedule out my time for the day. And so that helps me to be able to create goals, to figure out what I want to get done, so that way I can make sure that I'm saving space for that writing time in my day. Another thing when you're scheduling your writing time is to make sure that you're clearly communicating with the people in your household that you would really like some space and some quiet to be able to write. Maybe setting boundaries with your housemates, saying, okay, for the next hour, I'm going to be writing, so unless it's an emergency, maybe ask somebody else for help. So if you have kids, maybe see if they can ask your spouse for help. Unless it's an emergency, of course. If it's an emergency, then of course they should be knocking on your door. And maybe it's chaotic in your house. I always find it helpful to listen to music when there's other people home. But sometimes just communicating with other people, regardless of their age, whether they're young, whether they're the same age as you, whether they're older, and just being clear that you would like some time to focus, that can be really helpful with allowing others to understand what you need to reach your goals. So the second part of being organized is to create some sort of an outline. Why I like having an outline is it's sort of like when you're baking a cake and you're using a recipe. It helps to keep you on track. You know what you want to add, you know where you're going to add it, and there's several different ways that you can try doing outlining. One thing that I find very helpful is I like to have a writing journal for each book that I'm writing. This is a journal that I've been using for one of my current projects, and I have a full outline that I've written on my computer, but when I'm reaching individual scenes, I don't necessarily have all those details written down in my big outline. So I'll take maybe 10 scenes that are coming next, and I'll write about them in my writing journal. And I'll just kind of do a brief outline of that scene, and then that helps me to know, okay, as I'm coming up to the scene, I don't have to sit here and think about what's happening as much, because I know what's going to happen. Sometimes too, having a writing journal can help you just flesh out ideas about a character. You can do sketches, you can do doodles of characters, you can just write notes down about your characters for later. So I find writing journals can be really helpful in staying organized and staying on track with my works. Another thing is to find a method of outlining that works well for you. Some people want more detail, some people want less detail, some people are more visual. So it's really whatever works for you, but I really do recommend outlining your work because that's going to help you keep that workflow. So my last point is to be kind to yourself. When you're creating something, it's really easy to be hard on yourself and to be really judgmental while you're writing that first draft and to be thinking about, wow, like this isn't what I want it to be. I know it can be so much better. Why isn't this working out the way I want it to? And sometimes we become so fixated on these kind of negative things that it slows us down and it keeps us from wanting to write more. Again, it's your first draft. You've got so much more room to grow from here. You're just setting the framework now. So allow yourself to experiment, allow yourself to be creative, allow yourself to add this scene that you think now is probably really stupid, But you know what? Sometimes I write scenes that are weird and strange and I don't like, and I think they're stupid and they're probably horrible and I'm not gonna like it at all. And then I end up going back later and I read it and I was like, huh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Why was I making such a big deal about it? All I need to do is change this and this and that, and it works totally fine. So there's probably a whole lot more that I'm forgetting to put into this video, but these are some of the most important things to me as a writer when I'm working on my own first drafts. So hopefully this can help you with your work and with your progress, and maybe there's some just small tidbit of information that you can take away that's helpful. If that's the case, then I think I've succeeded with this video. I really wish you all the best with your project. I know it's going to be great. And remember, this is writing. It's meant to be fun. It's creative. It's exciting. So again, good luck and thank you for watching.